Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven. This is Northwest Small Batch Brewing, and I want to do a brew talk today about the state of lager in our country, in homebrewing in general. I suppose it's not just my country. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to pop this open. In case you're curious, this is Hop Valley. It's a local brewery in Eugene, Oregon. This one is kind of cool because it's called Stash Bandicoot. It's a imperial IPA with cryo hops, and I quite enjoy this one. So let's talk about lagering, because lagering has changed, gosh, in just the past year or two. That's good. I mean, just lagering, like how you can lager. It used to be, I've got to decide how I want to start this. The new stuff or the old stuff? Let's start with the new stuff, new ways of lagering. And there's probably more that I'm going to be able to mention in this video. So if there's more, pop it in the comments, and be good to have a nice list of what everybody does for their lagers. So in my opinion, you cannot call a lager if it is not made with a bottom fermenting lager yeast, right? If it's anything else, it is a pseudo lager. It's not really a lager because it's not the right, it's the yeast that makes it a lager, in my opinion. But let's start with probably the most popular thing that's going on right now, and that's using Kavik. And yes, I know people pronounce that word differently. It looks like Kavik to me on paper, so that's how I always pronounce it. At any rate, this is a farmhouse ale yeast, and you're right, I just said it. It is not a lager yeast. It is an ale yeast. So nothing you do with Kavik is going to be a lager. You could call it a pseudo lager, but it's not a lager. I've tried using Kavik, and I know some people have had great success, and then some people like myself have had terrible results from it. I feel like Kavik would be probably great if it's used in the manner it was meant to be used, which is for farmhouse ales. However, what people are doing, because Kavik is able to ferment at a much higher temperature, in fact, it prefers it, 95 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit is the ideal range for fermenting Kavik. That's 35 to 40 Celsius. That's pretty hot for any kind of beer to be fermenting at. And honestly, I have gotten such bad off flavors from Kavik yeast. That's why I'm not a big fan. But what people do is they take their Kavik yeast and pitch it into whatever, pseudo lager they're making at that temperature range. And then they generally put it under pressure. So you're using some sort of pressure fermenter, pressurize it, and apparently it can, finish fermenting just in a few days. I have another problem with this. People will take readings, actually some people don't even bother taking readings, but if you are taking readings, there are people that will take a reading and go, okay, I've hit my terminal gravity. My beer's done. I'm gonna bottle it, keg it, and drink it, whatever. The problem is, just because you hit your final gravity, your expected gravity, does not mean it's done. And we know this because the first beer off the tap and the last beer off the tap taste wildly different. And it's the last beer that's always the best. So we know that age means something. And so I have a problem with, this fast fermentation. But at any rate, the other problem I have with Kavik is that it often, you get this like orange flavor in any kind of Kavik yeast that you use. Even when you find it in like commercial breweries. So at any rate, that's the first thing that people are doing, is they're using Kavik under pressure at a high temperature to try to produce very quickly made pseudo lagers that you don't have to lager. Mostly because you don't have to have a fermentation chamber to control the temperature. You can just do it at room temperature, especially if it's summertime where you're at and it's in that temperature range. The next one that I am a fan of is Nova Lager. Now, first things, let me get this off my chest. And this is directly from Nova Lager. I'm not making this up. Nova Lager is not a GMO product. All right. It says it right on their website. Nova Lager is they use a breeding program or breeding technology with their yeast, but they did not genetically modify it. So what it is it's a combination of two yeasts. It is your typical, I'm going to say this wrong, Cerevisiae, or Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is your typical top fermenting ale yeast. I believe that's what SO5 uses, right? So first of all, it's already throwing warning signs up, right? Because that's an ale yeast. But they also combined it with something called, oh, this is going to sound bad, Eubanus. Sorry, children. Yeah, Eubanus, Saccharomyces eubanus. I'm not going to say it again. Anyway, this is actually a lager strain. This is a lager yeast. It's bottom fermenting. So it's a combination of an ale and a lager yeast. So does that still make it a lager? I think so, because there is a lager yeast in it. And it is, you know, so I think you can call it a lager yeast, but yeah, we'll see. Anyway, it also has been bred to reduce sulfur, so hydrogen sulfide in the beer, and it ferments at a warmer temperature between 50 and 68 Fahrenheit, which is 10 to 20 Celsius, and because of that, there is no need to lager it. So with Nova Lager, you can just ferment it like you would a normal ale, but you do have to keep it in that sort of cooler temperature range. So you still probably need a fermentation chamber to control the temperature, but you don't have to do a whole lagering schedule for it. And then, of course, and by the way, I've done this. I have on my channel, just search for Nova Lager. I have a video where I used it, and it turned out really good. I really liked it. I'm interested in using it again here in the future. And then you have your traditional lager yeast. There's lots of different brands out there, but again, they traditionally use that Saccharomyces eubanus, or there's also I'm just gonna say it. There's another anus. I can't help myself, but there is. It's not Ube. It's a different. Anyway, they're both lager strains. There's only a few lager strains of yeast out there, but this one, generally you have to ferment it between 53 and 64 Fahrenheit, which is 12 to 18 Celsius, which means you definitely need some kind of temperature control. And in addition to that, you have to do a diacetyl rest, which means you have to very slowly, day by day, bring up the temperature. Once it's done for the main fermentation, you slowly bring the temperature up, slowly to get it up to room temperature, so that you can let it sit at room temperature to do a diacetyl rest for a few days, and then you slowly bring the temperature back down, eventually cold crashing it, and then that's how you do your traditional lager. Longer process. I've done both. I do like the Nova Lager quite a bit, but my preference is either to do Nova Lager or just the traditional lager yeast, in my opinion. At any rate, I'm curious if there are other things out there. I mean, I don't think you can really call, now I can't think of it, a Kolsch. Some people try to call it Kolsch like a fake lager, a pseudo lager. It's not. A Kolsch is an ale yeast, 100% ale yeast. So no matter what you do and what you make with a Kolsch, it's an ale, right? It's an ale. It is very clean and crisp, but it's an ale. Anyway, let me know if you have other things that you would call a lager or pseudo lager. That's all I've got for today. I hope that was entertaining, and I'll be back another week for another video. And until then, cheers and keep on brewing.